Hello and welcome to episode 19 of We'll Review It Our Shelves, the podcast where we review the movies on our shelves. Every 2 weeks we'll take a randomly selected movie and we'll review it ourselves. I'm Brian Morgan, and joining me, who prior to this, during the intro, was making faces into the camera, is...
Dan Bergman.
Yay. You just got a little yay this time because you were making faces.
Well, we gotta have a blooper reel.
Yes. Well, hopefully our listeners enjoyed our Blazing Saddles episode. We haven't received any listener feedback yet. We are here today to discuss 2012's A Company Man. This is our first foreign film. It's a Korean movie.
Actually, no.
It's not?
Wouldn't Monty Python and the Holy Grail count as a foreign film?
Okay, foreign language film. How about that?
Okay, I'll accept that answer.
Yeah, so we actually had to read the movie this time. That was kind of fun.
I don't want to say I'm unusual or anything, but I know there's a lot of my acquaintances who don't like foreign films, or rather foreign language films, and a lot of people don't like to read their films. I don't have a problem with that. I rather enjoy foreign films. I don't mind reading subtitles. But the really funny thing about that is that even though I love foreign films and I don't mind subtitles, I hate YouTube videos that I have to read.
Oh, yeah, I don't like that either.
You know, it's like, oh yeah, the world's craziest disasters, and then it's all just basically a bunch of paragraphs. It's like, no.
I don't mind a subtitled movie. In fact, sometimes it helps clear up things. You don't have to say, what did he just say? Because I'm not worried about what they're saying. It is interesting to read and then correlate the facial expressions to what you're reading and to see if that's the right facial expression. Because in some cultures, they smile when they're nervous as opposed to frown. They have different facial reactions to different stimuli, different emotions. So it's kind of interesting to see that. But before we get too far into this, I know this is not on your shelf, so how did you watch it?
I rented it on Amazon Streaming. It was like one of those movies that was really inexpensive, just as good as anything. It was subtitled, but they didn't change the credits. It was all in Korean, so I really wasn't able to read who was in the film or the title or anything else. So lucky for me, I knew what I was watching, so
Fair enough.
I didn't require that in the credits.
This movie got on my shelf because a short story, my wife bought it, but the longer historic version of that to sort of get why we would have that in the first place. My wife teaches Taekwondo. I think I've mentioned that on the podcast before. And she was introduced to Korean pop music. And from Korean pop music, Christy got into watching a lot of Korean drama television, which you go on the internet and you stream it. There's stores you can go pick up DVDs and stuff, but she usually just paid for the subscription service to watch the shows. And the lead in this movie, and I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing the name properly or not, but Wikipedia has it as So Ji-sub, and IMDb has it listed as Ji-sub So. Koreans, their family name is first, unlike ours, where the family name is last. But yeah, Christy really liked the shows that he was in, and happened to be at a Korean grocery store or something, I think. Or maybe she even saw it at Best Buy. She didn't really say exactly where she got it. She just said she saw it, and it had the actor that she liked in it, and she said, oh, well, I should probably watch this. So she paid like $10 for it or something, and that's how it got onto our shelf. And that's why we're talking about it now, because it's on my shelf, and it was included in the Random Magic Movie Generator, so here we are. We kind of talked before we started recording, but I want to go over it again. What was your sort of initial impression of the film?
Well, the first impression I got of the film is like, when the random generator said, if people listen to Blazing Saddles, and it was like one of those moments of like, what? What is this movie? It's like, because I obviously didn't have it on my shelf and I didn't recognize it. But finding out what it was, I went on Amazon, and Amazon, the menu selection for the movie includes a trailer. So I watched the trailer and was kind of initially excited because it's basically a Hitman movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I rather enjoy Hitman movies. They always good Hitman movies always seem to throw in a lot of emotional drama. They're almost never just mindless killers. They have some sort of emotional level, whether or not they are sick of their job or they're good at it, and they have to reconcile that with dealing with other human beings or whatever. So I was excited about that. Watching the movie, I'm not gonna say it was, I believe what's the term you use, earth shattering.
Yeah.
As far as Hitman movies go, it was about average, not horrible, not the greatest. I mean, it's like for me the best one is Leon the Professional.
Yeah. In fact, now that you mention it, this movie kind of made me think of that.
This movie made me think of a lot of movies. I saw a lot of John Wick in there,
Mm-hmm.
Leon the Professional. Um, so now it's like I'm thinking it's like
Drawing a blank.
Yes, thank you, Gross Point Blank.
Oh, I said drawing a blank, but gross. That hey, if that prompted
Well,
you,
that was a line in the movie. It's like I know you. It's drawing a complete blank. Yeah, yeah, and, it's like a little bit of everything. Again, the emotional dilemmas and everything, and so yeah, like I said, my initial impression of the movie, it's an average movie. Not something that's gonna make me run out and go buy it right now, but it was enjoyable. I didn't fall asleep through it.
I think again having to read the movie, if you will, kind of keeps your attention focused on what you're doing. Because if you miss a couple of lines of dialogue, you could be totally thrown out of the story. That's why I don't mind subtitles, because it does force you to watch it. The opening scene was a little different than I expected because, and I don't know if I haven't watched a lot of Korean movies, so, but the movie ramped up in the lead assassin, the lead actor, and again, I don't want to butcher his name, so I'm not even going to try. But it ramped up the action to where he started doing things because in the first scene, they're on a mission, and he's on a mission, and he's got a temp, which, is apparently you can get a Kelly girl for assassinations. Who knew? And, he sends this kid in to do the hit, and he doesn't really do anything aside from clean up the mess, as it were. But the kid does a whole lot of stuff, and it was kind of one of those like, well, okay, I guess we're leaving this to to the imagination that he can do stuff. And I wasn't sure if it was just going to be one of those movies where it's implied that he can do stuff and he's just going to intimidate people throughout the entire movie. But as it gets going, he really gets into doing that assassin thing.
Yeah, that was the confusing thing because at first, again, being a foreign film, it kind of takes a little bit of a learning curve to really get into the groove of the story. And yeah, the kid who's working with him, he's basically doing all the heavy work. And I thought, okay, is this about him? And then, he ends up taking out the kid at the end and says, oh, it's nothing personal.
Yeah, it's just business.
And when I say the end, I mean the end of that scene.
Right. Yeah, at the end of the beginning.
And you don't really get to see him do his stuff until a little bit later. It was like, what, about 10-15 minutes into the movie?
Yeah, is when he actually starts becoming more active.
I'm not sure if in Korean culture, if, the setting, the tone, or, establishing, a character's skill as a master assassin is implied because, okay, here's this kid who does really well, but then he takes out the kid. Oh, is he the master? Is he that much better? Is it implied? Do they just understand that? And for again, for an American watching this movie, it took me a few minutes to think about that.
Yeah, and I think with most foreign language films, because as you discussed, Monty Python is a foreign film. When you get outside of Western culture, I mean, and really American films, because that's what we're primarily exposed to, the methods of storytelling become a little bit different. Some of the establishing story bits come later and at different points in the movie. One of the things that was interesting about this was before they even actually went in and did the job at the very beginning, they spent so much time just talking. And it was kind of a scene setter because a lot of the stuff that he said, when you look at it later, shows that they were establishing that emotional connection to justify why the main character did what he did. But one of the interesting things, again, going outside of foreign language films, or going outside of American film and into foreign language film, is that we don't know these actors. So if you watch The Professional and you know who Jean Reno is, you know that he's the main character. If you watch Bruce Willis, it's a Bruce Willis movie. Like, oh, okay, that's Bruce Willis. Gotcha.
He's the badass.
I know who that is. Yeah, but
he's
I
most likely going to live through the whole movie.
Yeah, I don't know this guy from Adam because I don't watch the Korean television shows that Christy watches. So, like, I think that's the lead guy. I mean, she told me because she watched it with me. She's like, oh, yeah, hey, I'll watch that with you. And one of the things that we discussed, getting back to the foreign language piece, and because she teaches Taekwondo, one of the things that she has taken upon herself to do is learn Korean. So she actually understood about 30% of the movie
Oh,
just
nice.
from the Korean. I understood when they said thank you, which is 감사합니다. So I knew they translated that right. But yeah, so the dialogue was fairly well translated. And that's actually something, because we're not watching it together, we're watching it on different coasts, and you don't have a comparison. But one of the things that I've noticed, especially if you go read reviews, is depending on what version you get, will dictate how certain reviewers will talk about it. If the translation is not good, or they catch the nuance of Korean wrong and they translate it as, yeah, I fell in love, and there's a difference between I swooned over her or whatnot. It makes a difference as to some people's, some critics' enjoyment of the movie.
I agree with that. That's the thing for me, again, the fascination with foreign language film is that different cultures, they're not American. They used to tell this joke in the Navy. It's like, what do you call somebody who speaks two languages? It's like, really? It's bilingual. It's like, okay, what about three languages? And they're like, um, trilingual? Yeah, but what do you call somebody who speaks only one language? American.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
just summed up the whole, because I mean, here we are traveling to all these foreign nations and everything, and yeah, we were the monochrome, ugly American, and it didn't matter what part of the states we came from because to people outside of America, it's just yeah, it's the
It's all
mono,
English. It's
it's
all
all
American.
it's American, and I think the sad part is that because Americans don't travel as much, or we seem very uh, what's the American exceptionalism that we're number one. We don't need to know anything else about the rest of the world. Screw them.
You have to conform to us.
Yeah, and so there's a lot of the subtleties and nuances of the culture and the language get lost in a lot of foreign films. And I think that's why a lot of people don't like foreign films is because they just don't understand it and they don't. This both aggravates and frightens me. Uh, but for me, I watch it in fascination, because it's like, oh, what is, like you were saying, there's a word for falling in love or a word for just casual swooning, whereas Americans
Hmm.
like, oh man, he's in love, it's like,
But again, we convey that in our inflection, and we have different words for that.
yeah, but unfortunately, a lot of the more colorful and detailed expressions tend to be in slang too. That's the other aspect of American English that I find we're quite lacking.
I don't know. The language is so dynamic. I vacillate. Sometimes I'm a purist and I get really frustrated when people don't speak the language properly. And other times I will lean heavily towards, I know what you meant. So let's just leave it at that. If you're presenting an intellectual argument, I would expect you to use the language properly.
Yeah.
If you're just shooting the breeze, I'm a little more flexible. So I usually land somewhere in the middle. It just depends
Yeah.
on the situation.
And that's the thing. It's funny that you use that term, shooting the breeze. And I remember seeing somebody, there was like a lecture about language. And the thing is like, especially in Asian countries, they have a lot of words for expressing shooting the breeze. Because then there's a word for shooting the breeze about business. There's
Mm-hmm.
a word about shooting the breeze about romance, and it's all informal talk because then there's a whole other set of words for formal talk about business, about romance, about eating.
Oh, sure, but one of the things that happens with language, though, is there are dialects. So if you, for example, go to the southern states and they talk about a soda, and you go to the northern states and they talk about a pop. Actually, I think it's the other way around. The rest of the states will say a pop, and the South will say a soda. You're talking about the same darn thing.
Hmm.
I grew up in Oregon. I called it pop when I was a kid, and then I joined the Navy. And after a few brief months of indoctrination, I started calling it soda. But I still know what pop is.
Hmm.
And in fact, for a long time when I was a kid, everything was a Coke. Like, hey, you want anything from the store? Yeah, I'll take a Coke. What kind? Oh, Dr. Pepper. I said a brand name. I said a product. So, the language is dynamic in it, and it changes. So, for example, and this is a recent example that was explained to me on another podcast that I listened to. Egregious. Egregious now means something negative. Originally, it meant something positive. So, the language changes. So, that's another thing to contend with in our language. Other languages do the same thing. So you can
Yeah.
watch something, a period piece from Korea, and they'll say kamsahamnida, which is thank you, but maybe 400 years ago it meant you're welcome. It meant the opposite. I mean, who knows?
Yeah.
I suppose the Korean people do, but that's in the spirit of somebody knows, I don't.
Yeah, so like I was saying though, like we've expressed, the different subtleties, the different nuances. Plus, the other thing I like about foreign language films, I like to see people of other countries speaking their own language. There is something about that.
Yeah, they have weird accents when they speak their language. That was sarcasm.
Oh, okay. Humor. It is a difficult concept for you.
Sometimes. Yes, maybe.
See, I mix in Vulcan with Bane. Yeah, so you got it. Yeah.
I see what you did there.
I see.
Vulcan Bane. Wow, I wonder what that would look like. Anyway,
That would be interesting.
we digress.
We do. But like I said, hearing people of other cultures using their native tongue to me is, I don't know if you can say it's an artistic expression that I like better when it comes to filmmaking. I mean, bring up an example to express how I feel about this. It's the movie Dances with Wolves. Actress Doris Leader-Charge is Lakota Sioux. She's Native American. She was brought on to the film as a language coach because she's one of the few people left in the world who can speak Lakota Sioux. And Kevin Costner liked her so much that he brought her on as a character. Now she's in the movie.
Oh, cool.
Most notably, it's a short scene. It's after the buffalo hunt. They're in Ten Bear's lodge. Her character, Ten Bear's wife, is telling a story about when they were young, and Ten Bear said that he would be a great chief, and he got chased by a buffalo and ran up a tree. Everybody has a good laugh and everything. But the amazing part about that whole scene is that she is speaking 100% accurate, genuine Lakota Sioux. And it's probably the last time that it'll get that much exposure in this world. It's wonderful that it's preserved now for however long movies are going to be preserved. And again, it's like to hear a foreign language, and I hesitate to use it when talking about Lakota Sioux because we're Americans and that is Native American language. But to hear a different language spoken genuinely, it's again, I mean, movies are supposed to take you places. They're supposed to put you somewhere other than where you're living now, and that does that. And so watching a foreign language film where the people are speaking in their native tongue takes me to Korea. Watching this movie, it reminded me of my time in Korea. It wasn't just enough to see the neighborhoods that they were filming in and some of the buildings and things. It really took me back to actually hear the language. It was the full package. That's what I'm trying to express, why I like foreign language films.
No, I like it. I think that's a great explanation for why you enjoy it. I like foreign language films every now and again because the languages tend to be more lyrical.
Poetry.
There's almost a certain poetry, there's a certain music to them. And even English, there's a certain music to it, cadence, delivery, all that kind of stuff. It's just when you don't know what's being said, it makes you rely on what I'd said earlier about reading facial expressions. And then when you see, when you're reading the dialogue, you really have to balance your eyes so that you're reading and watching and you don't miss anything.
Oh yeah, well that's the great thing with foreign language films too. It really teaches the multitask.
Mm-hmm. The good thing about this is there were some slow parts where they really sort of caught you up on the dialogue, and the action parts were just the action parts. So you don't really need to hear them go oof, pow, sock, or anything like that, unless they wanted to do the Batman thing, in which case probably wouldn't be appropriate for this movie because it was a little more serious. But whatever. I think the way the plot worked on this movie was pretty good. It followed, as we discussed earlier, something we've seen in American movies a lot. For those of our listeners who haven't seen it, if you're going to go out and watch it, as always, there will be spoilers, but functionally what this movie amounts to is an assassin who has a change of heart after seeing what amounts to a younger version of himself just getting into the business. This 20-year-old kid who we were talking about earlier goes to do the hit, and they're having a conversation, and he's asking the kid, what he wants to do and that sort of stuff. And the kid says, yeah, I want to work for the company. I want to get promoted. I want to do all this stuff. And the kid asks him, what did you want to do at 20? And he wanted to do something else entirely. He wanted to be a singer. And I think that's a common thread in a lot of assassin type movies, not like the Hitman series where they're programmed or whatnot, but a lot of the times when you watch movies about people who kill people for a living, take the Expendables. All those guys wanted to do something else. This was just a thing they were really good at, and they wanted to save up money and go back to making art or doing something that had nothing to do with killing people. And I do find that interesting as a trope, because when you shut off your emotions to kill somebody for money, these are people who are incredibly emotional. And it's kind of an interesting exploration of the human condition and the ability to isolate one's emotions to do a thing. And this is the extreme version of that.
It brings up an interesting question as you say that. It's like, can emotions be stored, to a breaking point? Because I mean, when you talk about these hitmen who turn off their emotions,
Yes.
okay,
Oh, absolutely. That's why people snap.
yeah, I don't know. I've read a few things about snapping, but that's neither here nor there.
But in the sense that you've seen movies, and I think there's one, and I'm quoting it, and I don't remember what movie it is, but it always struck me as amusing. Oh, oh yeah, yeah. We don't talk about that. We just take that and we just bury it down deep, and we just push it all down. You just put that right away, and we don't ever talk about that emotion. We just leave that right there. Just put a little shield around it, and just kind of keep it right in your gut, and leave it right where it is. And when you do that, that's what causes stress. If you can't let out those emotions in a positive way, then that's what causes people to reach that breaking point.
I was gonna say, because some of the best assassin movies that I know of deal with somebody who has done exactly what you said, turned off those emotions for so long, and whether it's meeting a young child who awakens a parental instinct, or somebody who just one day decides, hey man, I don't think this is worth it anymore, and tries to reconnect with his old high school
Yeah,
sweetheart or whatever. It's just,
yeah. Or like the professional, the kid, the paternal instinct sort of thing.
yeah, and that's the thing. When they do reawaken those other emotions, it's always in a very large and dramatic manner.
Well, that's the movies for you. I mean, they
And
should be large and dramatic, otherwise we wouldn't really
yeah,
care.
that's why I asked the question: do emotions truly act the way they are portrayed in movies, or is it Hollywood magic, or is it art imitating life?
Yes.
Okay.
Sometimes it's Hollywood magic. Sometimes they take it to the extreme, like Hitman movies. I mean, I'm sure that, I'm not stupid. I'm sure that there are people out there that will, kill people for money, and people that do it professionally. I mean, when I say professionally, I don't mean they do it for a living. That's their job.
Oh
I
my
get it.
God, you're a psycho! No, no, not a psycho kills for nothing. I do it for money. That okay? That sounds
For
bad.
money. Yeah, this movie, A Company Man, is hard to quote, so we'll just
Mhm.
quote other movies. That'll be fun. But my point is, using the lines from Gross Point Blank, there's a certain moral ambiguity. That it doesn't mean they don't have emotions, but even talking to or seeing interviews with snipers, they're like, look, it's just, it's a job. I shut that off. You talk about people in sports. They learn to control their emotions. They get nervous before a game. They get nervous before they go out and do what they're supposed to do. But they learn how to isolate that so that it doesn't affect their performance. At least the good ones do. It's a natural ability of humans, especially when you've trained yourself to do it. I don't think the hitman's first job or first week or whatever in hitman school is an immediate shift to being able to do that. They have to get through the I'm about to kill somebody.
It's a common characteristic in Hitman characters in movies is that the first job is always the worst and most sickening, the hardest one to get through. But then they say the second time it's a little easier, and as you go along, it gets better and better.
Like the 20-year-old kid in the movie that the main character saves, he was pretty good at the whole hitman thing, so it makes you wonder how long he'd been doing it. There were maybe some minor mistake type things, but that was really sort of the situation, and he recovered nicely. So he ended up successfully killing his target and doing what he needed to do, but the amount of people he had to kill to do it, it was like, all right, I don't know, are there 20-year-olds that could do that sort of thing, or is that I think that's more of a movie magic kind of thing. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. Or, sometimes every now and again, they have the character trope that he's the natural. He seems adept at it. To me, sometimes those are the scary ones. Scarier than the ones that are trained and hone their skills over years and everything and become masters at it. The ones who can jump into the job a little too easily.
Or with a little too much eagerness.
Yeah, those are the ones that are actually the scary ones to me.
But I think that's a trope of Hitman movies, as we spoke of before when we talk about that emotional piece, is the really good ones recognize that aspect of their humanity, but they suppress it until one day something comes along that relights that spark of humanity. And they're like, whoa, hold on, you know what? This is not what I want to be doing for the rest of my life. However, in this movie, it does turn out that that is what he does for the rest of his life, is kill people. Spoilers.
Yeah, well, yeah, the rest of his life, all, hour and a half left of it, movie.
So did you see that going that way? In that he died at the end?
I kind of did. It was at that 50-50, but at some point during the climax, I figured, okay, he's not making out of this one way or the other. He's either going to jail or he's going to die, and the kid's going to live.
I will say 65% certain he was going to die at the end, because that would have brought the closure bit around, and there was really nothing for him to, I don't want to say live for, but he had this burgeoning relationship with the kid's mother that he had listened to when he was a kid, because she was a singer, again, for our listeners who haven't seen it, and the relationship was fine from a movie standpoint. I just don't think they built it up to a place where it was going to be something that was a long-term love affair, like a settling down kind of thing. It was more of this is yet another piece of humanity that I have missed, and now I really don't have anything. It doesn't really matter if I live or die. I just need to stop these people from chasing after the kid and his mom and the family. So
yeah, it seemed like that the family, the mother, the burgeoning romance. It's like whether it was real or just through his own eyes. I guess it was like his last chance at any kind of redemption in normal life. And when that was gone, when she was ultimately killed, in his eyes, that was it. That was my last chance. Oh well, okay. Let's go kill everybody now.
Yeah, well, now I have to exact my revenge, and that's when it became a revenge story. But some of the stuff that he did, where he took a vacation, if you will, was, again, fairly standard type of stuff. He didn't really go take any jobs, and the jobs that he did do were not fulfilled properly. He said he killed, like, the director or whatever, and he didn't. One of the other people in the company. He said he killed the kid, and he didn't, because, again, he was tired of the killing. Obviously, as you go through the movie and he's confronted with having to kill, it was really more about killing the right people, killing the bad guys, as opposed to just killing for the sake of getting paid.
Yeah, it's like at that point, it's like all the rest of his killing in the movie was basically self-defense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or at the very least, self-defense and defense of others. He was protecting the kid and ensuring that he would not be chased down by these people. The one thing that I did call for certain was his old mentor turning on him.
I did not see that coming.
Yeah, when he went and talked to him, there was that whole, you get out and then all you want to do is get back in. They foreshadowed that, and I'll tell you, one of the things that I have picked up because of this podcast and because of the way we're watching movies is when I'm watching a movie for the podcast, I tend to pay much closer attention than I had in the past. Which doesn't mean I don't pay close attention to other movies. It's just if I'm getting ready to talk about it for, at 45 minutes to an hour, hour and 15 or whatnot, depending on how long we chat, I've noticed that I start to pay more attention to little key triggers like, oh, he said that. I'm pretty sure that means that this is going to happen later. So it's an interesting byproduct. I really am enjoying it, but there are times when you kind of want to go, I just kind of want to go back to watching for fun.
Yeah. Eventually, when you do things like this, the fun becomes work.
eh, I'm still having fun.
Oh yeah, well, no, we're having fun, but
I like the conversation part of it, and watching the movie is fun. I kind of enjoy the conversation piece just as much as watching the movie, unless it's one of my favorites, in which case, sorry, you're cool and everything, but that movie rocks.
so I want to segue then. It's like we're talking about a lot of the good things about the movie. What kind of things, did you not like so much about this movie? Did it have a few shortcomings for you? Because it had a couple for me. They're not huge, but noticeable.
Yeah, there were a couple of things that I didn't really like, but none of them are springing to mind right now. I wasn't terribly excited about the car chase, although, what was that, a Maserati?
I'm not sure what that was. I'm not a car expert, but
Yeah, it was a nice car. They made a point of showing, how nice the car was. And then, when he gave it to him, it was like, oh, all right, cool.
very nice.
Yeah, very
Yeah,
nice.
for me, the things that I found to be shortcomings of the movie, nothing major. Probably a little nitpicky on my part. In the beginning of the movie, when the main character is going to meet the boy's family, he comes across a few punks, hoodlums, whatever, young kids. And there's this whole thing that plays out where they think that they're tough and they're going to beat him up, but he ends up putting them down with little to no effort because he's just that skilled. Even when the kid pulls a knife on him, he just takes it away from him. It's cool. And I think, wow,
Right.
okay, they've established that this guy does have skills. It's not just implied, they showed it.
Yeah, I think that was the actual first time that they showed him doing anything
Yeah,
that wasn't just jumping from one stairwell to another.
yeah. So fast forward to the climax when he's got an AR or an AR derivative, and he's going to do some badass shit. Because he's walking into the company. It was already shown that everybody in the company has a firearm of some sort. So he's vastly outnumbered, but you're thinking this guy's a badass. This is going to be a badass scene. And then right in the middle of the scene when he's fighting these people, he does a total and I don't know if you ever heard the term pray and spray,
Oh, yeah.
where he's got the gun in front of him, he's not looking down any sights, and he's waving it back and forth as he's going full auto. And it just was like that thing where it's just like, yeah, this guy's bad, and what the hell is this? Did not like that.
I've never actually shot an automatic machine gun in full automatic. I've always used controlled bursts, and
Hmm.
it's hard enough to stay on target doing that. I've seen people shoot full auto, and it is not okay. I have shot full auto with a 50 cal machine gun before. That's a little different because it's tripod mounted and it starts, but it starts to walk up, and staying on target is a lot more difficult than the movies make it seem. So I did kind of appreciate the spray and pray thing, just because it was, in my opinion, laying down suppressing fire to make them duck for cover so that he could get to where he wanted to be. And I'll be honest, the scene that you're talking about, I kind of enjoyed the more realism of it as opposed to this one badass assassin going up against all of these other people who are supposed to be assassins in their own right. And they can't be that crappy. I mean, they have a business where they kill people.
Hmm.
I did like the scene when he was in the car with the lady that was trying to kill him.
That
That was pretty
that was
awesome.
badass.
And there was some realistic type stuff that you kind of like, oh, yeah, you don't usually see that in American movies.
Yeah, that scene in the car was very reminiscent of the Matrix when Morpheus, so it was the second
Yeah,
Matrix and the
yeah,
freeway
yeah.
chase scene, and Morpheus was fighting the ghost twins, and one of them got in the
Mm-hmm.
car, and yeah, that was very reminiscent of that, and that was pretty badass. I rather enjoyed that scene, but I don't know. It's like, yeah, I mean, yeah, laying down suppressing fire and everything. I mean, again, I had very limited. I was not a ground combat person in the Navy, but we were taught that when you're using an automatic or a semi-automatic, short control burst. You can lay down suppressing fire, but you still do it in a short control burst sort of manner.
Yeah, because the idea is to get them on the defensive.
Exactly, and that, like I said, I just when I saw that whenever I see that in a movie, and especially this one where you have established that this guy is a pretty badass assassin, to do that, and that's like, wow, that's just I saw too much bad Hollywood movies, and that just kind of that I wouldn't say it ruined the movie, but it definitely took me away from it for a little bit.
And it was at the climax too, so that kind of makes it a little different.
Yeah, but when he ducked in and took cover, and then there was that whole short scene of, do we go in? Do we finish the job? Then it got back to being good again.
Yeah, the scene that I didn't really care for, the part of that scene was the one guy beating all these badass assassins. And they show the scene where they're all down in the little training room or whatever, and they're doing knife takeaways or something like that. I kind of thought that was pretty cool. In every assassin movie that you see, unless it was like Wanted, in which case that was a little bit different, it's usually they're just all these people and you don't see various levels of training going on. You see the junior assassins who are learning their little knife takeaways and stuff. And you're like, oh, well, I suppose somebody had to teach them all that junk. I mean, they didn't just wake up knowing it one day. So that was kind of a neat touch. I didn't understand how the overweight, middle-aged director or boss, the manager, not the director, that was somebody else, how he got into that position. I mean, I guess it's sort of a business aspect. You have to have somebody doing that. But he had zero skills, and I think they even make it a point to say he's never killed anybody. He's never done any of the work that we do.
Yeah, and that's kind of that was another aspect I did not like. It's like I think even in a no, no, okay, let me take that back. I was gonna say even in an assassin business, you should probably have somebody you know. But I've known too many businesses where people get chosen to be managers, but they absolutely know nothing about the industry that they're managing.
I think they have to have somebody who can, work the books and direct assets to where they need to be. That guy, the guy that plays
Yeah.
that role, apparently he plays a very similar role in a lot of different shows. Again, I was talking to Christy, and he is typecast as that kind of asshole manager type of dude in whatever shows he's in. So typecasting is not a specifically American thing. It happens in a lot of cultures apparently, or at the very least it happens in Korean television and film.
I believe it. Yeah, that guy, I did not like that character, but I guess that was the whole point, and I guess fine.
Right, right. One of the things that I kind of wanted to mention earlier when we were talking about subtitled movies and watching foreign movies, and it was a real quick, it's a sea story, I get it. When I was in Thailand, we were able to stay out overnight, and me and a friend had gotten a hotel, and we were just sitting in the hotel in Phuket, Thailand, at the Duanjie Resort. Nice hotel, but we were kind of bored waiting for somebody else to finish showering or something so that we could go out and do whatever it was we were going to do for the night. And so we turned on the television. Now, there were some shows that were in English, but we ended up watching, it was almost like a stage play on television, but there were no subtitles and it was all in a foreign language. And I guess it was, Thai, since it was, in Thailand, it makes sense. But we ended up watching it and just sort of filling in the blanks ourselves and sort of adding our own dialogue. So, I've never really had an issue watching foreign language films. Sometimes it's kind of fun to interpret their facial expressions and the scene and just add your own stuff.
Yeah, that's that show, Most Extreme Elimination Competition, where it's a Japanese game show where they have dubbed over the Japanese language and just did a bunch of comedy routines based on the facial expressions and everything, and it's freaking
Yeah,
hilarious.
it's fun. So I don't know why I didn't say that earlier. I meant to, but yeah, I just kind of wanted to bring that up because I thought it was fun. One of the other things about the office scene that you were talking about that maybe I missed, but when he goes in, he gets all dressed up in his best suit and all that kind of junk, which again is the indicator that bad things are about to happen in American films. I mean, you see it all the time, like, oh, they're putting on the good clothes. That means they're about to break bad. I didn't notice that he had put on a bulletproof vest. So when he got shot in the scene, I was like, oh, I thought he was going to get fatally wounded right there. I was like, oh. When did he put that on?
Yeah, I didn't notice him putting it on either. I didn't notice he even had it until the scene when he's going up into the elevator and the young lady, the random young lady he meets, and she says, "Nice vest." And I look at it, it's like, oh, son of a bitch, he's wearing a vest. So, and I put two and two together real quick, and it's like, yeah, it's probably bulletproof, and it
Yeah.
was.
But I don't know. Again, it was a fun scene. It was exactly what one would expect out of a action assassin type movie. So I pushed the I believe button and rolled with it.
Same here. I think the only problem I had with it though is like again when he finally confronted the asshole manager. Yeah, it's like okay, guy has to die. Movie satisfaction. But I don't know, throwing him out the window. I don't know. What'd you think? I kind of thought of a better way, but
I probably could have done without that. Yeah.
yeah, there could have been a better way to do that. I
But
don't know.
somehow you had to alert the local constabulary that bad things were happening because apparently the massive amounts of gunfire coming from the building wasn't enough for them to really just rush over there en masse.
Yeah, I think that was the other disappointing thing is that there wasn't a whole lot of interaction with that cop. I think the cop aspect of it was very
That
underused.
seemed like
I
kind of
think
a
they,
dangling thread for a long time until they brought it back and said, "Oh yeah, it was just a thing we were going to do." All right.
yeah, I'm not saying that I could have done better, or I'm just saying it's like it was there. It's like okay, so if you have it, use it. If not, it's kind of useless.
Yeah. Well, my resident expert on Korean drama and Korean film enjoyed it. So, and again, she picked it up because it was an actor that she'd seen a number of times before and liked. So, which is interesting because I don't know, this is slightly off on a tangent, but are you familiar with the ABC television show The Good Doctor?
I cannot say that I am.
It's new this season. It's I think they're about 8, 9, 10 episodes in, something like that. But that entire show is based off of a Korean drama with the same storyline and all that kind of stuff. It's an autistic young man who becomes a surgeon, and it's the trials and tribulations of him trying to fit in and interact as a surgeon and do things. He's autistic, but he's a savant. So, he can visualize and memorize things. It's just the social aspects are the big thing. But it was based off of a Korean drama. And in fact, we watched the first episode just because of that. And they actually tell you in a title card that this is based on the Korean drama. I think it's the same name. I don't remember. But there's a lot of influence in American television, or there's a rising influence in American television and American music of Korean culture. If you watch the American Music Awards in 2017, if you are listening to this in the future, hopefully we survived the nuclear war. But one of my wife's favorite K-pop bands played at the American Music Awards live. I think they won a couple of awards or something. So it's a rising influence, a rising trend. So it's popular right now.
I was gonna say, basically, Korean cinema is kind of on the rise. I mean, I found out about it because as we did our number 13 podcast, I talked about my love for horror, and Korean horror is actually on the rise, and they've had a few wins, so to say, with Korean films that have come to the states or anything. I forget the title of it, but it was about zombies on a train speeding through
Yeah. It
Korea.
was. I was just thinking it was I don't want to say storm chaser, but snow chaser, snow something or other.
Snowpiercer.
There you go.
Yeah, well, that was a different movie, but but again, it's like zombies on a train. That was they
Was
said there
Samuel
was a
Jackson
really
in it?
no. I'm sure the American remake. I am sick of these moving zombies on this moving train. And then there'll be fan theory saying the universes are connected somehow.
Of course, because that's how these things work.
But I can't say that it was the breakout. But one that definitely stands out was The Host, was a Korean horror monster flick about a giant mutated fish monster that was eating people. So yeah, Korean cinema is definitely finding a niche to American audiences. So hey, you know what? We might be helping that out here.
That's entirely possible. Introducing people to a new genre or a new experience in film. Yeah, like I said, I didn't mind it. It wasn't particularly groundbreaking, earth shattering. It was fun. I've definitely seen plenty of crappier American movies.
Oh, no disagreement there.
But going back to the Korean influence on American movies, Avengers: Age of Ultron, they shot a significant portion of that in Korea. You've seen it, right?
Oh yeah, I've seen it. I'm just trying to remember
Yeah.
what parts were in Korea.
When Ultron went and was creating the Vision's body that he was transferring his consciousness into, that was Korea.
Okay.
Well, South Korea specifically. But
Yeah.
on a weird tangent, the couple that my wife works for are Korean, like from South Korea. They moved here, started a Taekwondo school, and that's how Christy got to work there, because there was a Taekwondo school and she teaches Taekwondo. But I've had some conversations with them about Korean culture and Korean television and that sort of thing, because they do the same thing. They watch streaming television on their computers and stuff like that. But we were having a conversation after a tournament, and we were staying in a hotel, and we were talking about MASH, which is set in the Korean War. And I was just curious about a couple of things that they had discussed in MASH, so I had asked them about it. And it was interesting because there's not a lot of animosity, towards North Korea. It's kind of they tend to feel bad for them because they're stuck where they are, that sort of thing. They said, yeah, that's mostly the older generations that kind of have that issue and stuff like that. So my point in bringing this up is, I think part of the rise in Korean cinema and Korean pop music is, as they go farther and farther away from the Korean conflict and they become more safe, I guess, more comfortable in their society, they are opening up more to other experiences, in the same way that after World War II and Japan got rebuilt, they started introducing electronics and cars and stuff like that, and the Japanese culture started shying away from the historic conflicts, if you will. Germany did sort of the same thing. It's just kind of interesting. So I had a lot of fun talking about Korean culture with actual Koreans from Korea, and it was interesting. They said one of the things that I kind of alluded to earlier is there are dialects. So if you're speaking Korean in Busan and you go to Seoul, you might not actually be able to understand them in the same way. They might be using the words differently in the same way that we do in the North and South. It seems to be a little more pronounced, though, from what they were saying. Yeah, so I guess this was a more Southern South Korean language, which is kind of what Christie's been exposed to, which is why she was able to say that the translations were fairly accurate from what she could tell and what she'd spoken to other people about. It makes a difference.
I believe it.
Yep.
It's funny, you mentioning, the Korean War and the animosity, whether or not it's still existing or not, towards the North and South. At present, anybody who just even casually follows American politics and world events, we're having some issues right now with North Korea, which we don't need at the moment, but for some reason they just keep fanning the flames of that. But if you had somebody with half a brain to realize, I'm sorry, which Kim Jong are we on?
We're on Kim Jong Un.
Kim Jong Un. I almost said ill, but I had to be sure.
That was Daddy.
Yeah, that was Daddy. He loves movies.
That's what I've heard.
Yeah, that aspect of his character comes up a lot. Is that in fact, there was an event, I don't know if it was confirmed or not, it gets mentioned quite a bit, where he kidnapped a South Korean director, had him brought to North Korea, and he forced him to make movies for him. I mean, that's how much he loves movies. But again, somebody with half a brain can realize, wow, this guy loves movies. That's your in, man. It's like, hey, you know what? You love movies. Let's work together. And we'll make movies in your country and everything, and you can have some say in it and everything, and bring some money in. Maybe you can start feeding your people.
Yeah, maybe you could, maybe movies in trade for nuclear bombs. That's fine. That's a fair trade.
You know what though? We don't even have to bring that up initially. You just keep him occupied with that, and he'll forget about. You get Michael Bay to make movies for him, man. I guarantee you, he won't. He won't worry. Nuclear what? I'm sorry. I'm too busy watching Transformers 9.
Yeah. Oh, look at the big robots.
Look at big robots. They're blowing everything up. Outstanding.
Yeah. Yeah. So had a lot of good conversations, like I said, about Korean culture, and it's just it's interesting.
Yeah, and it's the ironic thing for me personally is that I'm liking Korean horror films after this movie. I just might get into Korean films in general. I just don't have a great memory when I was actually in Korea.
It was a long time ago.
Yeah, it was not my favorite country to visit. I don't want to say they didn't like foreigners because that seems a little broad. They just didn't like us. And I,
Yeah, I think that depends on where you go. I know I was following a friend of mine on Facebook just went to Korea, and there were some protesters when the ship pulled in and stuff like that. So, I think some people aren't happy and some people are just fine, and it's just like any other society.
yeah, I mean, we didn't see any protests, but we'd walk into a shop and they tell us to get the hell out.
Yeah.
A lot of places didn't want to serve us. We almost got run off the road a couple of times. Yeah, like I said, just we didn't see a lot of friendly people.
Alrighty then.
A few here and there.
Okay then. Yeah. So, did you have anything else you wanted to discuss about the movie?
See, we talked about the climax, talked about character development.
Talked about the action scenes for the most part. One thing I did want to say real quick that I did really respect about the organization itself, all of their records were on paper. There was very limited computer use for the assassin organization. I thought that was a really neat detail because you can't hack a piece of paper.
No, I was, as you said that, I didn't really see that aspect, and now that you mention it, I'm thinking about it. It's like, yeah, everything was on paper, and absolutely, that was probably the safe way to go.
Yeah, so they could do the big shred party, but it was definitely interesting. I did like the secret tunnels and stuff in the building. That was kind of a neat touch.
Actually, thinking about that, I like the line, where it's like, hey, you can quit. There's too many bodies. He tells the guy to quit shredding paper because it's like no point in that
Yeah,
now.
exactly. Best way to do this, light the whole damn thing on fire. But, I mean, the police had no one to arrest because they were all dead. And part of the thing that really helped with the closure of the movie and the young kid being able to escape the life was that he was not an employee of the company, he was a temp. So that transaction was straight cash and never really had a record, so to speak. It was just like, yep, that's a temp, bang, and we're good. So that was definitely interesting that there were no electronic records kept and that they maintained that through the whole movie. It seemed like all of their electronic stuff was business cover record keeping stuff. And I did find it interesting when the cop was investigating ARS Steel or whatever it is, and they go to the defunct factory and they're like, this factory doesn't work. And there's a guy just making circles with a forklift in the back.
Yeah.
I laughed.
That was kind of yeah. That was a subtle little bit of comedy there. I totally forgot
uh,
about that. Yeah. Oh, just thinking about it though, it's like were the cops using computers in the few scenes that they
I
were
think they
featured?
were, if I recall correctly.
Okay, then yeah, yeah. So this was a conscious decision of the filmmakers to portray the company using paper. So
Yeah.
I think that just makes that cooler. I think yeah, that's definitely an aspect, and it'd be interesting to see if the inevitable American remake
We do
follows
that.
suit.
I don't think they need to make
We
a
do.
remake of this movie because I think there are enough other movies that exist in that genre, that style, or that theme.
Yeah, but you know it's going to happen
Yeah, but I think it's already
because
happened
that's Hollywood.
enough. I mean, like The Professional. I mean, we've already cited, three or four different examples of movies that tell functionally the same story. So, but then again, we've had plenty of Office television shows, and yet we remade The Office. Talking about The Good Doctor, earlier. Like, oh, hey, yep, that's a good idea. Let's steal that.
And that's the thing when it comes to remakes of foreign films. I think we've saturated the market with the Japanese horror genre. We had The Ring and The Grudge, a couple others. It's like I think we've pretty
Well,
much done
we've,
that. And I
we've
think they're going to move on to Korea.
it's just right across the yellow sea. It's all good. But all right. So any closing thoughts? I think we kind of covered that just now.
Yeah, I think
All
we
right.
did.
So if you owned it, where would you put this on your shelf in the where does this belong in your shelf, Dan?
Well, if I were to buy a DVD copy, probably a standard copy, I don't really predict that there's going to be a whole lot of special features and making of attached to it. So, this is a general population film. If I were to choose to own it, it was good, but like I said, nothing overly special. Unless I make a separate foreign language film section, then it would go there.
Yeah, I think From the foreign language standpoint, this is the best foreign language film we've reviewed to date, mostly because it's the first.
It's the only foreign
Yeah,
language.
like I said earlier, it was serviceable. It wasn't anything to write home about and say you absolutely have to see this, but by the same token, it wasn't terrible. I would probably put this, right middle of the pack, third shelf of a five, if you will. Just it was a movie. I don't regret owning it. This is actually the first time I've ever seen it, so
Isn't it funny when you've had a movie on your shelf that you've never watched and you decide, okay, I'm gonna
like
watch it
yeah,
now, and
it's
it's just
time.
yeah, it's just that really weird thing. I mean, it's like that's what I was thinking, and I was thinking more like with games, but it applies to movies too. Black Friday, it's dangerous for collectors. Because I found so many games and movies. I'm finding games for like $12 and movies that normally are $50 for like five.
I've done that before, and I'm like, oh, I guess I'll play that one day.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like later on, a couple weeks later, you're like, oh yeah, I do have this one,
Oh yeah,
and it's like I can play it or I can watch it. It's,
yeah. But yeah, so yeah, it's perfectly serviceable. Um, yeah. All right. So shall we find out what our next movie is?
absolutely. Let's hit that random generator.
All right, and here we go, pressing the random magic movie generator button.
Mimic.
Oh, Mimic.
Interesting.
Um,
I haven't seen that movie in a long time.
yeah, neither have I. There's a reason. But anyway, we'll talk about that when we get to the episode. Nice.
Nice.
All right, so Mimic in 2 weeks. Thanks again for listening. If you want to leave feedback on this or any other episode, please visit us on our Facebook page, which is We'll Review It Ourselves on Facebook. If you just give it a quick search, it's pretty simple to find. It's got our logo on it and everything. You can leave us feedback on the iTunes, as we've mentioned before. You can leave feedback on the Google Play. You can also email us at WRIOS2016mr@gmail.com. And on a weird side note, that has nothing to do with anything, when we first started recording for the podcast and getting, the idea for this going, it was 2016, which is why it's, We'll Review It Ourselves, WRIOS 2016. I find that kind of amusing as we fast approach 2018, that, our email address is 2016. We're not changing it. Keep emailing us at that address. Or just email us, because we haven't really gotten a lot of feedback on our email address. So we're feeling kind of lonely.
Yeah, we have listeners.
We do. We know.
We have indication that people are listening to us, but
Yeah.
talk back
Yeah,
to
let
us.
us know what you
We
think.
want to hear from you. God, even if you want to bully us and
At
tell
this
us we
point,
suck,
I'll just
hey,
take any attention. No.
hey, show business, man. Movies, there's no such thing as bad publicity.
Yes, exactly. It's all good. It's all publicity. It's what it is. So, yeah, leave us feedback on any one of those various means, and we will definitely discuss it at the beginning of the episode, as we have been doing for the last few episodes now, since we changed that little bit. And we will see you in 2 weeks with Mimic.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't have a goodbye for this one, so it's all on you.
Yeah, Christy taught me how to say goodbye in Korean, so I got this covered. 안녕히 가세요. And again, thanks for listening.